Hello, everyone, and welcome to our town hall today. This is Paige Nues. I'm Director of Family Empowerment with RettSyndrome.org. So happy to have you here. I'm broadcasting live from California, and we welcome you to an update about what's going on with our clinic at Washington University Children's Hospital, St. Louis. Before we get started, I want to give you just a few housekeeping things about how this app works. We are using GoToWebinar today, and for your benefit, you're automatically muted, so you don't have to worry about any noise in your background, and all webcams are turned off except for our presenters. We are recording today's session, so don't worry about taking notes. You'll receive a link to the recording within a day or so of the presentation, and we invite you to please share the link with other families that you know who weren't able to join us today, or with anyone in your care circle who might benefit from this information. Also, throughout the presentation, you can submit your questions into the text box. We do have a nice list of questions that were pre-submitted, and Dr. Weisenberg, Dr. Ryther, myself, and our other presenters today will be answering those questions at the end of the presentation. But if any come up to your mind throughout the talk, go ahead and put them in the chat box, and we'll get to them towards the end. We are so happy to have you all with us today. Thank you for making the time. We are here at the intersection of Rett syndrome, a global pandemic, a lot of societal issues, economic issues, natural disasters, so many things vying for attention and thoughts and action on our part, that we wanted to refocus and give you some positive news, some hopeful news about the state of Rett syndrome, what's going on for medical care, what we at RettSyndrome.org have been up to over the summer to get us refocused on our precious loved ones with Rett syndrome and all the wonderful things that we have to help you along your journey. So with that being said, let me share a little bit about the agenda today so you can know what's coming up. We're going to have a nice welcome from a local parent who most of you know, and to really get us focused on what's important in our lives. Then we're going to hear from Dr. Ryther, Dr. Weisenberg, and other important staff at the Rett Spectrum Clinic, Washington University and St. Louis Children's Hospital. I'm going to come back online to give you some updates from RettSyndrome.org, along with our state reps, Joyce Opinsky and Amanda Sommers. Okay, so in the interest of time, I would like to go ahead and invite Mickie McCool to come on screen with us. And Mickie, if you would like to bring your webcam on, I'm going to turn mine off.
Okay.
And yeah, thank you. And we'd love to hear a little bit more about you and your story and your journey to really touch folks and let them know that we all have something in common. And
that we do. Thanks. Thank you, Paige. So many of you have probably, I've been around long enough that you may have heard this story before. So apologies in advance if it's a rerun. It's not as good as like a Friends rerun. But we are friends, and I'm glad to be with you. So I'm Mickie McCool. I live in O'Fallon, Missouri with my husband, Dave, and our two children, Ellie and Bryce. And Ellie is 23 and she has Rett syndrome. And Bryce is 18 and he's a senior in high school. And just a little background, Ellie was born in August of '97. And you know, we had that, you all know this story, right? You all have some version of this story. We had a real typical year. She was my oldest child, so if nothing became apparent to me till she was almost a year old. I think it was on July 12th, just a month shy of her first birthday, that I really had an inkling that something was up. And by August 12th, just the week before her birthday, we were getting an MRI. And for the next 3 years, we went from neurologist to neurologist to neurologist, and none of them ever mentioned the words Rett syndrome. It feels like yesterday and like a million years ago, but almost no one knew anything about it. Then we were on our third or fourth neurologist, and he said, you know, I'm going to do a test that they just had developed, this genetic test, and let's just rule it out. I don't think she has it, but we'll check it out. And he ruled it in. And so here we are that much later. So that was, she got that diagnosis when she was nearly 4 years old. She got it on February 12th of 2001. So the 12th of never, right? Like our first inkling was on the 12th of July. Her MRI was on the 12th of August in 97. We got the diagnosis on February 12th of 2001. And 3 months after that, we attended our first Rett conference in May of 2001. So when Ellie developed these disabilities, I don't know what to say. We were in the process of modifying our dreams. In fact, we modified our dreams quicker than you can cook a packet of ramen noodles. And that continued, right? And it continues still to this day. So we went to this first Rett conference, and what we learned was that Ellie was in there, and just like we suspected, but we couldn't prove it to anyone. And we began our unwanted role, but we embraced it as advocates. This is what we did in life. And we advocated for other people to know that Ellie was in there and Ellie had something to give. And yes, there have been teachers and others who have challenged that from time to time, but never doubt for a moment that Ellie was in there. And in modifying those dreams, one of the biggest dreams I had was to have someone close to this home that we live in who was an expert, like we got to see once a year at the Rett conference, which was Dr. Percy or Dr. Newell, or some of the other experts that we had known. I dreamed about having a clinic here in St. Louis. It was a major dream. And that dream did come to fruition, right? But before I tell you about, obviously, because you're here, but before I tell you about that, let's go to one more 12th date. On the 12th of January, 2014, Ellie participated in the NNZ 2566 drug trial, which is now trofinetide. It was still in the earlier stages. She was the youngest girl in the country to participate, and she was the first girl in the country to get the great big dose. And we traveled down to Birmingham for that, and it was, again, my dreams were modified as we moved through that trial. So one of the challenges I have gotten from various people is for me to explain how this young lady who has so many needs, who cannot walk and who cannot talk and who has seizures and who has so many physical disabilities, I've been asked to tell, how does she contribute to society? Because I maintain that she does much more than I do. And one quick no-brainer way is to say that she has participated in medical research. She's done more in her short life of 23 years than I probably will ever hope to do in mine. And I've told people this before, but Ellie's fingerprint, I'm sorry, somebody's printing right next to me here. Or that, this is Rett life, right? Ellie, that totally distracted me. Ellie's participation in this drug trial is her fingerprint. That's what I tell people. It's on Rett research. And someday, when all of this leads to bigger treatments and a cure even for our daughters, I can say Ellie took part in that. And any way that you participate, also, we have this now in St. Louis. That was the next dream, right? The next dream is that why don't we have research here at this top-notch university, Washington University, that that we live so close to, and we do. So we have that now, and whether, no matter what you do to be involved in this clinic, remember that your daughter is giving back to society. That's the one thing that I like to encourage every parent to know and understand. It doesn't matter how the research goes that your daughter's giving back to society. I had one friend who participated in research and it just didn't go quite the way she wanted. Her daughter has given, just by being in these trials, even in the natural history study, and anything that you, any way that you help your daughter be involved in this life, she's giving back. And I'm so grateful that we have this clinic here in St. Louis. And that's really all that I have to say to you. I hope that's a small encouragement, and I hope I at some point get to meet every single person who might be listening to this. Right now, all I see is my face, so I feel like I'm just talking to myself. So, yeah. Thanks, Paige.
Mickie, thank you so much. In our Zoom world, I was on mute, so I apologize for that while your printer was going off in the background. And so that's our real life coming into the frame. And thank you for bringing your family into the frame of Rett syndrome, because as I said, we are at the intersection of many, many things, but our first priority is to these beautiful angels. And we are so grateful for Ellie. We're so grateful for you and your family. What I'd like to do now is invite Dr. Ryther to come onto screen and talk with us about the clinic. And before I turn it over to you, Dr. Ryther, I really want to thank you and Dr. Weisenberg and everybody on your team for being with us today and for all of your efforts this summer. You know, we always say how grateful we are for professionals like you who have chosen to come to Rett syndrome. I would not be here today without my daughter, Katie, having brought us into this world. So we thank you for that. But especially at this point in time, we know summer has been extremely challenging for you, and that you have really had to change how you practice and what care you give, and do some incredible pivoting in your work. So we want to just start by saying thank you for all of that. And thank you for being with us today to say how some things have continued in your clinic and how things have changed. So I'm going to turn off my webcam here and let you go.
Thank you very much, Paige. And I wanted to actually start by saying thank you to Paige and all of the team at rettsyndrome.org. Not only for organizing events like today, but the tremendous advocacy and support that they provide for all of our families and for the clinics as well. I did want to just briefly start by introducing two other people to you at this time. So Dr. Judy Weisenberg, if you would turn on your video, and also Wendy. So Judy is my co-partner in crime and will be speaking a little bit later. Really one of the true hearts of our clinic is our nurse coordinator for our clinic, Wendy. So Wendy, I'm not sure if you were able to figure out how to get your camera to work yet or not, but hopefully you can say hi verbally if you aren't able to figure out the camera quite yet. I know that she was struggling. This app is newer to us. Although we're doing a lot of telemedicine now, we are a little bit more familiar with Zoom, which I imagine many people are also familiar with as well. So, well, hopefully Wendy can figure out buttons in a little bit, and maybe we'll come back to that a little bit later. Next slide, please. Perfect. So, both Judy and I have our own stories that we don't have time for yet as to how we came into this world as well. But they also brought to us what we thought of as our personal mission, which became the mission for our clinic as well. And so we feel that our clinic's goals are to work on enhancing the quality of life of all of our patients and their families, to specifically provide support and education. Today is one example of that. To really help empower our children to find their voice and to communicate, and to also help our families learn how to act as an advocate for their own best children. We have many, lucky enough to have many strong advocates who we are learning from as well. And then ultimately, we also wanted to be able to provide a resource to have families access research and innovation. So that's a little bit, as Mickie mentioned, a little bit more closer to home so that the travel and the burden of that same research isn't quite as difficult. Next slide, please. So at the heart of our clinic, when you come to meet us, you meet a core set of team that every family meets. That includes the neurologist, which is either myself or Dr. Weisenberg. It includes a nutritionist, a physical therapist, an augmentative communication team and OT expert, as well as an equipment specialist. So the days can be a little bit long. They usually are several hours. Most families spend the majority of a morning with us when they come to visit, but that's what we would consider the core team of every clinic visit. Next slide. However, the team really doesn't stop there. Ultimately, it also is working in partnership with your primary care doctor or your pediatrician, as well as also in many cases, the families, particularly who come from farther away, working with their primary neurologist locally as well. Next slide. In addition to that, some of our family members need more care, and so they might have a variety of specialists both in the pediatric and the adult world. These are just a few examples. We do our best to try and coordinate visits either on the same day or sometimes as part of a 2-day extravaganza, but ultimately working with those specialists as well as a key part of the overall Rett care. Next slide. But again, it really still doesn't stop there. It continues to work with things like the advocacy groups and RettSyndrome.org, for example, and Golf for Ellie, working directly with our schools and our community therapists, because we are probably the minority of our families' lives. People also like community dentistry as well. And of course, as we mentioned, and we'll go into a little bit more detail later, bringing research opportunities to our families. Next slide. So world has changed quite a lot from 2020 has certainly been a little bit of an adventure. And so in the past, there are a couple of sort of key features to the clinic to make sure everyone's aware of. The first, and one of the things I consider one of the most important, is there is no age limit to our clinic. Some of the specialists, as you saw on the last slide, may change from a pediatric version to an adult version, but both Dr. Weisenberg and I and everyone as part of the core clinic team will see anyone who qualifies for the clinic with any age at all. In addition to that, in addition to Rett syndrome, which most of our families joining us here today have, we also see in the clinic people who have something called MECP duplication or mutations in 2 other genes that are similar and have related challenges called CDKL5 and FOXG1. We also, outside the clinic, will do evaluations for anyone who's concerned that their child might have Rett syndrome, but perhaps hasn't yet had an established diagnosis at another institution. Insurance, we certainly as an institution take a broad range of options. I do not ever pretend to be an insurance expert, but one of the things that helps many of our families is that we can provide letters for out-of-network insurance companies to get in-network benefits. So for example, in the state of Kansas, there does not happen to be a Rett clinic in that state. And so we can often work with families in advance of their first visit to the clinic to try and get it covered under their typical insurance. To make an appointment, your first stop is to simply give Wendy a call, and she'll start helping you to gather some of the information and the records that we need, and also find out from you what are your current needs and how urgent is the visit. And again, I do want to mention that we are very lucky to be supported through a number of different ways, including RettSyndrome.org, NIH, and other clinical trials, and also Golf for Ellie. Next slide. So when coronavirus started, unfortunately, because of the high risk of our patient population, we did end up shut down completely from about March until most of May. Throughout that time, and perhaps unexpectedly, we had a flurry of new families who were just diagnosed with Rett syndrome, and we did consider them urgent and important enough to make sure that they were still seen in one way, one mechanism or another. So in many cases, that was with a face-to-face visit. But also there are times that was arranged as telemedicine, or in some cases when the only option was a phone call, it was a lengthy phone call with Dr. Weisenberg and I. In addition, for the most part, if they were a patient with an established diagnosis, but who was perhaps new to the area or just new to the clinic, we asked those families to wait, but we also had all of them screened with lengthy discussions to make sure they didn't have any immediate needs that really needed to be addressed in March rather than addressed in July or after. And then for our families that were planning to come to clinic already during that time frame, we did do telemedicine options for those that needed, and again, offered face-to-face on an individualized basis depending on the family's need. But the full Rett clinic, unfortunately, was deferred during that time. Next slide, please. So our clinic has been open and operating fully since June. We have also been able to add additional clinics to provide opportunities for those who had an appointment in the earlier time frame that was canceled. And I am grateful to be able to say that everyone that was canceled during that time has now already been seen. We do ask for people to wear masks in clinic. Many of our girls cannot. Dr. Weisenberg will talk about that a little bit more in detail. But for example, the parents and other caregivers. What you will also see, though, is everyone that you meet is now fully masked in clinic. And because of the fact that our girls cannot wear a mask, you also see goggles. So this is not Dr. Weisenberg and I, but unfortunately a pretty good representative example of what we look like in Rett Clinic these days. It certainly can be a little frightening to some of our younger girls, but they are adapting more quickly than I would expect. One other challenge is, as an institution, they have also asked that only one adult be present. But we do have ways around this. So for example, we offer telemedicine options if a different parent or grandparent would like to be able to be part of the visit. And we can also, of course, do speakerphone and things like that as well. And particularly in certain cases where physical needs, or especially, for example, for a newer diagnosis, where really it's critical for both parents to be able to hear the conversation directly, exceptions to that policy can be made. So if that's something that is very important to you, please don't ever hesitate to ask. For those of us who have been to our clinic in the past, we also used to rotate rooms, that was loved by some, not as much by others. But because, again, of coronavirus now, we do not do that any longer. And so for our youngest kids, that does tend to be a bit of a challenge because they are stuck in a room for probably more hours than they would like to be. And we now also do the check-in for the visit itself in the same room itself. At the moment, all testing is completely available. There was a period in time where tests were certainly limited to only an urgent basis. But the big key to know to that is that some of that testing may require coronavirus pre-testing before you're allowed to proceed. Next slide. So none of us know what the future will bring right now. We are certainly in a much better position today than we ever were back in March to prepare for a worsening of the pandemic. So we're hopeful and optimistic actually that we won't be shut down fully again. But if we are, we will be continuing to offer new diagnosis and in-person visit if it's appropriate for their family and they feel comfortable with that. New to clinic patients, again, as they were before, will be screened for urgent needs, and depending on that answers, will be looked at more fully. And then scheduled return patients, again, will be offered virtual visits with Dr. Ryther or Dr. Weisenberg. At times, there are limitations with a variety of different states related to that, but we are creative in getting around some of those boundaries if needed. And ultimately, as we did before, we will find a way. And so once clinics are reopened again, we will add extra clinics, we will extend the length of clinics to catch up and to find a way to meet the needs of everyone. Next slide. So that's really the most important message, is that during these tougher times, we will find a way to figure out how to help you in the way that you need that help, and also in a way that you feel comfortable with that as well. Next slide. So one of the things I do want to highlight, and as part of our mission is education, both not only for other physicians and medical students, for example, but of course our families as well. And so we have a yearly educational symposium, and this year it will be completely virtual. And so that's on Friday, October 16th. We do ask that you register for the meeting so that you can get the link to it as well. And this year we are focused on a variety of topics, including one of the world's experts in communication and Rett syndrome, a cortical visual impairment expert, and actually some of our local families who have, unfortunately, through their own trials, become experts in navigating a lot of the school systems. And then I will actually conclude our day, since this is our 5th year birthday, our 5th year anniversary, with an update on where the clinic has been and what we've accomplished and where we expect to go in the future. We were hoping to blow out a few candles together, but we'll have to do that virtually this year. Next slide. So, as many of you know, we have a variety of different research studies that are currently ongoing at St. Louis Children's and Washington University. And how we approach sort of engagement in research is that we discuss sort of both what you're eligible for and what you may have questions about at every clinic visit. We talk not only, of course, about the studies that we offer here at our institution, but that are available elsewhere, that if you're eligible for them and you might be interested in them. We also reach out to individual patients when we review our own list when a study opens to think of who Dr. Weisenberg and I think meets the eligibility requirement. And so we will tend to at least contact you at least once or twice to say, you know, here's a study you're available for. Is it something you're interested in learning a little bit more about? And the studies do fall into 2 main categories right now. One is observational trials, and that in particular is thinking about ways that we can continue to learn as physicians about Rett syndrome. And the other is true therapeutic trials, which of course is one of the more exciting things for our families. And so amongst observational trials, many of you are both participants in and well familiar with something called the natural history study. This has been ongoing for many, many, many years, and is unfortunately in nearing sort of the final phases. And so we are currently being asked to focus on return assessments, and we are frequently looking to try and combine that with a time that you may already be coming to our institution, either with a Rett visit or perhaps a visit to see another physician as well. And we are also looking at using some telephone and Zoom-based interviews to continue to gather data during this time. In general, with the exception of some of the more rare diagnoses, they have asked us to defer some newer diagnoses as well, but don't ever hesitate to ask about participating, and we will guide you on where we fall on that right now. Dr. Weisenberg is going to talk a little bit more about some of the studies that are specific to CDKL5 next. And then, of course, there are, in 2020, not 1, not 2, but 3 therapeutic trials for MECP2 that are being offered at our institution. And we are thrilled to be able to do this. This is what helps us to continue to provide hope for the future and ways to continue to move forward as a team in the community. These trials, as you may also have heard, also all underwent brief shutdowns during the worst of the pandemic as well. So roughly around the same time frame that our clinic itself was shut down. For those who are already enrolled in those trials, they were, of course, contacted, and limited data and safety data was continued to gather in the most safe and appropriate ways at that time. But all trials are now open again across the country. So I'll start by talking just a little bit about the trial that is probably the one that most people are the most familiar with, which is the Acadia trial. You may also have heard it go by lavender or lilac, and also, of course, the drug name, which is trofinetide. This is the pediatric version of that trial, so there are some age restrictions for it. It has both a double-blind and an open-label extension portion to that trial as well. What this is targeting is a portion of a molecule called IGF-1 that has been in many earlier trials to be found to be actually quite safe and to work on a variety of functions, but specifically Rett targeted things. And so again, this is actually a Rett specific trial looking at the underlying biology and improving that biology in Rett syndrome. The next trial is the GW trial. This is a product that is a pharmaceutical version of a CBD purified oil. It is also a pediatric trial. It is also includes both a double-blind portion as well as then an open label extension. And I should pause for a moment and just explain briefly what that means. So in the double-blind portion, this is the true research portion of the trial. So neither ourselves nor you would know, for example, if your daughter is obtaining CBD oil or if they're obtaining a placebo, which is sugar or a fake pill essentially, or liquid in this case. And what we're doing then is gathering data about how they respond, both from a safety standpoint, but also hopefully as an improvement in various Rett specific functions. Then what you are offered at the end of that trial is to enroll in what we call the open label extension. And that means that everyone is offered drug. We have some more flexibility in terms of things like the dosing of that drug as well. We then continue to gather both safety and efficacy data throughout that time. GW trial is also famous to some extent for a lot of epilepsy or seizure-based trials. And so from that standpoint, it is important for me to point out that this is not a seizure-based trial in Rett syndrome. And the dosing, for example, is a little bit different than it was in some of those earlier trials. The third trial is Anavex, and they have actually just concluded the adult enrollment for that trial. And so that trial is currently not actively enrolling, but in the future, they actually are actively working on a pediatric version of the trial to make available to our younger patients as well. So again, what we approach is by looking at all of these to see what you're eligible for, discuss what possibilities you have when we see you in clinic. And then again, we also reach out to you if we think that you're an excellent candidate and hope that you might enroll with us. Next slide. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Weisenberg now and let her talk a little bit more, starting with some CDKL5 information.
Thanks, Dr. Ryther. As we have been talking, one of our many goals is to offer any research opportunities that are readily available to our patients. And one of the things that our clinic is also part of is a network of other CDKL5 centers of excellence around the country. And we are a member of an international consortium that also involves Australia. Our overall approach to research for our patients with conditions related to CDKL5 is the same. We always make sure that any patients who are visiting our clinic are aware of opportunities available to them. And whenever we become aware of a new study, we review our patient lists and make sure to inform families if they are eligible for new trials. We share data as appropriate, both with some CDKL5 specific natural history studies, as well as the larger natural history study that Dr. Ryther mentioned. Some of our studies are looking at things like specific response to epilepsy treatments, including in the world of infantile spasms and a form of surgery called corpus callosotomy. And we're very excited to be involved in a upcoming project that's going to be looking at some of the assessments we use to identify how either progress or lack thereof is occurring with things like development, like motor function, in order to be better able to track responses in clinical trials. With regards to therapeutic trials, currently we only have one open study, but are hopeful that some more are on the horizon. This is the Marigold study, which is looking at ganaxolone for treatment of epilepsy in CDKL5. This study has closed enrollment, and we still have some individuals at our center who are continuing in the open label extension. We're very excited to see the outcomes of that data that recently finished being collected. Next slide, please. One of the things that Dr. Ryther alluded to is that so much about what we do is comprehensive care and collaborative care. And so when we are seeing our patients in clinic to make sure that they have a comprehensive care, we are looking not just at one medical problem or one piece of life. We're trying to be comprehensive and anticipate all potential problems. And we follow primary care guidelines that were developed with the help of rettsyndrome.org. And we also share these so that your primary care providers can become aware of the kinds of screening that your children need annually or less frequently, symptoms to monitor for. And we're very excited that this data has now been published. These guidelines have now been published in the medical literature. And this was previously on the rettsyndrome.org website and will be coming back up again in the coming week, I believe. Next slide, please. So we cannot have this talk without talking about how to handle COVID. This is a very complicated topic, but really the question is, how can we keep our girls, all of our children, particularly our children with Rett spectrum conditions, safe? And of course, it's not simple. The devil is in the details, and the reason we have a scale here is just like every decision, there is a balance of risk and benefit. So when we're thinking about things like, should my child go to school or stay at home and do virtual learning? We know that there are certain things that just cannot be accomplished as well virtually. Physical therapy in particular, social interactions are just not the same across a screen. That being said, there is an increased risk of infection. And so we have to find that balance in looking at what precautions are being put in place and then make individualized decisions. There is not one right answer for every family, for every child. It is very important for you to talk with your doctors and other caregivers involved before making specific decisions. So absolutely, you do want to think about the value of in-person school, the value of routine. In-person medical care, including continuing routine vaccinations, is highly recommended. And then explore your options. If there's an option to do individualized therapy through a private location versus school, that may be better. You can also do things to decrease risk of infection. So mask wearing, sure, we don't have all the answers, but overall, there really is no downside to anybody who can keep a mask on wearing a mask. Now, for some of our patients, for some of our young people with Rett spectrum conditions, keeping a mask on is very challenging and it is not worth forcing it. But if they will keep it on, it should be encouraged. Absolutely, everybody should be washing their hands and being careful about what they're touching. And we also want to minimize how many people and who those people are that are in contact with our family and our children. Other things to consider are the risk factors and the necessary contacts of your immediate households. And in some cases, you may trust the people who you are considering more than others to be honest about their current health or possible exposures. And all of these things have to be taken into consideration. As we know, there are never zero risks, but it's a new situation and we're all still figuring out what the right calculations are. And the bottom line is we're learning more every day about COVID-19. And this constantly may change even what we think the right answer is to some of these questions. But please know that Dr. Ryther and I and Wendy and all of the members of your care team are happy to try to answer individual questions for you and support you in any way that we can. Next slide, please.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Weisenberg. Thank you, Dr. Ryther. You all are doing an incredible job. Wendy, all of you are really in unprecedented times You're coming up with answers and solutions to help us all along our journey with Rett syndrome. And what I would like to do now is share some information about what our foundation is doing. And again, the reason we're doing our town hall today is not to give you all the information that there is known about Rett syndrome and spectrum disorders and how to care for your children, but an update of what we've been doing this past summer to let you know and have the confidence that we are not quitting. None of us have walked away. Dr. Weisenberg, Dr. Ryther, Wendy, and team, you had many choices this past summer and you didn't let us down, and we appreciate that. We at rettsyndrome.org, we also did not close down. We continued with our strategic plans over the summer, and we have a lot of new things that came out, and we've all been so busy. Not sure if you caught up with the newsletters and the announcements, so I wanted to share a few things with you about rettsyndrome.org and how we're working in partnership with the clinics, with our state reps and our volunteers, and with professionals and other advocacy Rett syndrome organizations around the world to really be a leader in the field of research and family empowerment. We believe that those two things are hand-linked, that we can't leave our kids behind today while we search for a cure and interventions and treatment. So I want to share just a little bit of information today in both domains of what's new and exciting for you. Our mission is to accelerate research. Rett syndrome is an incredibly complex disorder. We know that a cure will come, but it will require multiple treatment approaches. We're investing in gene therapy, treatment medications, neurohabilitative therapies, and the research strategy is really to target every possible approach. We need to help our children today, and we need to create a world without Rett syndrome tomorrow. And I want to define that phrase a little bit because I know that some people have a reaction to that. Our belief is that we honor our children, we love our children. Our loved ones with Rett syndrome are a child, an adult, a woman, a boy, a man first. It is the symptoms of Rett syndrome that get in the way of them developing to their full potential that we aim to ameliorate and remove so that they can have the full potential that they deserve as human beings. And that's what we mean when we say we want to create a world without Rett syndrome. So we are at this incredible point in time where all of the research that we've been investing into in the field of basic and translational research is coming to us as in families. And as Mickie shared, her family was able to participate in clinical trials. Ellie participated in one of the first ones to come to the country. And Dr. Ryther went through many clinical trials that are available today. We never thought we'd be here. So we've spent a lot of time thinking, how can we help our community be Rett research ready? Because the next phases of research cannot advance without us as families participating and engaging, but it's pretty overwhelming especially for our newly diagnosed families, to learn exactly what the syndrome is, much less what does it mean to participate in a trial and to participate in research, and what research is out there, what is research that's being invested in that is interesting and hopefully will bear fruit, versus what are the research studies that require family participation. So we came up with a Rett Research Ready program, which is a multifaceted program that we launched in July. And it's to help the entire Rett syndrome community have a portal, if you will, a place to go to distill all of the information about the research field where you can engage now. It's a strategic extension of our overall research strategy. And it really, when it comes down to the part that is, I think, most fascinating and helpful for families is the MyRett Trial Finder. If you'll join us on October 13th, Dr. Dominique Pichard, our Chief Science Officer, will be giving us a full tour of the MyRett Trial Finder, as well as the Rett Research Ready program and all of the wonderful things that you'll be able to find when you go to our website to, again, help you get to information faster. If your child is at an age and meets requirements and some of the enrollment protocols for a trial finder, you can just distill through that information quickly through this portal. You can also add yourself to a list so that as your child ages, perhaps he or she may age into a trial, and you can get some alerts about that. So join us on October 13th and you'll get some more information. We're very pleased to bring this programming to you. We want you to engage in research that we know is vetted and trusted. Anything that is a search result return in My Trial Finder at this point in time comes directly from clinicaltrials.gov, which is where all approved research programs that are active live. But that site is very difficult to sift through, and it covers every research program that is out there. Through My Trial Finder, you'll have results be pulled from clinicaltrials.gov that are really relevant to you. Okay. The other side of our mission is really about empowering families. Our entire organization is made up of parents, caregivers, and friends of those diagnosed with Rett syndrome. We take our information. I'm with the foundation. I have a beautiful teenager with Rett syndrome myself, and I am proud to serve this community in the way that I was served when Katie was diagnosed. And that's really the community and the culture that we encourage at our foundation, is family-centric and child-centric, while pursuing the most aggressive research that we can, and really bringing together medical information that will help us today, as well as quality of life information. Dr. Weisenberg, thank you for talking about the primary care guidelines. That's a direct result of the investment of our community into our foundation, and an investment of the time of all of the medical directors from the clinics across the country, who also liaised with medical directors in the field of Rett syndrome from around the world to distill what we think is the most a short checklist, if you will, of symptoms that you should be aware of and be testing for and looking for, as far as we know today with Rett syndrome, for both children and adults. Okay, so empowering families. What are some things that are available to you as a family if you're newly diagnosed, if you're at a point in your journey where you have a new symptom or a new issue that has come up in your family, or you're further along in the journey as an adult? Well, we have a lot of resources for you. I hope you all have visited our website. I hope that as a family you have ordered or have been gifted the Rett Syndrome Handbook, often known as the Bible of Rett Syndrome. The information in the handbook is solid. We want our new families to know that that handbook, it should not be really, don't sit down and read the book cover to cover, because not everything that is referenced in that book is going to be something that your child will experience. It's really as a desk reference guide that you can go to when you have a question about breath holding, or a digestive issue, or a communication issue. It's to be really a launch point when those questions come up. Our website is constantly refreshed. A print handbook is out of date almost the moment you publish it, and a website is a living repository of information. I want to take us to our website for a quick moment. And please don't crash on me. Okay, hopefully everyone can see our website. I'm not going to take you through everything, but because of the complexity of Rett syndrome, because we have a broad mission that encompasses both research and family empowerment, our website is pretty thick with information. So I want to show you quickly how to find what I think are some of your most incredible resources in your state reps. So if you go to rettsyndrome.org and you click on For Families, you will be taken to an area where we have a lot of information for you, from a newly diagnosed family connecting directly to someone at our foundation, to informational downloads of resources, to a list of current clinical trials and education. I'm going to go right here though to resources. And if you go to resources and then from resources click on state resources, you'll be taken to a map of the United States. We're going to focus on Missouri today because that's where our wonderful clinic is that we're hearing from today, but you can click on any state. So if you're looking to move somewhere, or you know of a family who lives in another state, we're a small community, very small but mighty, you can click on any of these states and be taken directly to some incredible contact information right away. Sam Brandt is our family and community engagement manager at rettsyndrome.org. She lives in Kansas City and she serves the entire country. Sam is always available to you for any questions or information that you would like to chat with somebody about. But really, you have experts in your own backyard in Joyce Opinsky and Amanda Sommer, and they're going to join us in a few minutes to share some information. But they are volunteers with our organization. They have children with Rett syndrome, and they have graciously put their personal emails and phone numbers up for you to reach out anytime you have a question or a need. And if you go to any other state in the country, you can click there and find some other incredible volunteers that can help you in your search. We've also compiled information about clinical trials and things that are happening in your state. We have clinic information. We have advocacy organizations and agencies who are here to help you with waivers, with accessing respite, with getting IEP advocates and support. We also, if you scroll down, you'll see a lot of information that we have pulled together from parents who have recommended, parents who have gone before us, who have tested this stuff and wanted to share with other families, things that are fun and available to you in your community. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my slides here. But please take a, none of us have free time, but on our website, we have lots of information for you to connect with real people who can help you along with your journey. You can find IEP support, clinic referral list. We also have a lot of social media feeds. We have networks for special interest groups, dads, grandparents, siblings, single parents, everybody who has a unique perspective and wants to have a unique conversation with others. We've got a special interest group for you. We also have our rettsyndrome.org feeds on Facebook and Twitter, and we hope that you like them or join these groups. You can just look at the things that are being announced and shared and discussed in these forums, or you can actively participate, whatever feels right for you. Sign up with us. We have emails where we will regularly give you breaking news and headlines about what's important in the field of Rett syndrome. And we also have available to you, especially for our newly diagnosed families. I know personally how hard it is when you're getting the diagnosis to really have that quick answer for people of what's going on with your child. We have found that having your child having kind of their own business card, an angel awareness card, really helps with that conversation. We can help provide you with a template that gives you a nice short description of what Rett syndrome is, and you can put your child's picture on that and have those to hand out. So when you're in the grocery store, or right now maybe you're not out and about in a lot of places, but when you are and you want to have that quick conversation and you want to raise some awareness, these angel cards are fantastic to hand out. You can also create a personal page, which is another place and another avenue where you can put up your family's story, and you can share that link with others so that you can journal and you can keep people up to date. You can ask for donations to the cause. Many people want to help you. They just don't know how, and these are ways with the cards and with your personal pages that you can invite people to support you on your journey. Another thing that we did over the summer, at the time of shutdowns back in March, when many of us were getting the news that schools were closed, our therapy centers were closed, and we were thrust into our homes and asked to stay there in place until we knew more about the virus. We knew that many families were at home without the usual equipment, without the usual therapists, without access to the things that we knew were really important to our families. And we were so grateful that our worldwide community of professionals stayed available to us. And we did a whole series of Facebook Lives for families of how to do therapy in our home and what were the most important things for our kids to keep doing, to keep moving, to keep stretching, to keep communicating. And we recorded all of these sessions and we've kept them on our websites because you know what, this has a long shelf life. It actually was triggered by COVID and helping get things like If you're lucky enough to have a pool, how to do aquatherapy. So when you're out for a swim, you don't need to have a professional aquatherapist with you. There are a lot of things that you can do that while you're splashing and having fun are very therapeutic for your child. We recorded these Facebook Lives and they are still living on our website. You can access them. And what was really neat, well, we were able to go live via webcam into people's homes and have and capture a therapist who was across the world giving advice to a parent in their home using a couch, using a wall, using a yoga ball, of different techniques for a child, a teenager, an adult. And we think that you can still take advantage of these recordings. So take a look at them and the communication strategies and communicating and connecting while at home. All of this material could be helpful for you. It could be helpful for a grandparent. It could be helpful for an aunt or uncle or a new caregiver. If you have a new caregiver or respite provider come into the home, ask them to sit down and spend some time watching these sessions. And I think that your life will be enriched by it. Okay, we also, to come back, we have periodic updates that are written by our medical advisor, Dr. Tim Benke, who's from the University of Colorado Children's Hospital, and he's been writing updates along the way that have been vetted by our whole network of medical advisors in the time of COVID. So the news and information that we have is changing. What we're learning is changing, and we're have published these guidelines that you can take to your care team to support, as what Dr. Weisenberg is saying is a very personal decision for you. Ultimately, the choices you're making with your child, but you might need some printed information, if you will, or published information to support the things that you're asking for from your community providers. So you can find that on our website. We also have, and we've been doing this for a couple of years, and we are doing it from now forward, monthly webinars. I mentioned these earlier. They're on topics that you have said are important to you. If you go to rettsyndrome.org for families and go into that education section, you'll find an entire library of recorded sessions on very specific topics, whether it's epilepsy, autonomic dysfunction, GI, nutrition, sleep, quality of life, inclusion at school. We have topics on these. In our upcoming webinars, I mentioned in October, we'll be doing an overview of all clinical trials and the trial finder. In November, we're going to do a deep dive on communication. And in December, we're going to talk about vision and Rett syndrome. We talk a lot about CVI and CDKL5, but there hasn't been a lot of information brought to our Rett syndrome community, and we have some new information and some new findings to share. So those are just some of our upcoming sessions, and they are free thanks to our many sponsors who support education for our families. We're able to bring these sessions to you free of charge. They are worth their weight in gold, so please schedule for those. Now, the communication guidelines is the culmination of 5 years of research by a global team, contributions from over 600 individuals of how our children communicate, both with low tech, mid tech, and high tech. We were able to accelerate the publication of the current communication guidelines at the time of the pandemic hitting, so that families could get their hands on the print version. We also have an electronic download version. This is a really nice guideline that now that it's been available for a few months, we've had feedback from speech language pathologists, AAC experts, people who've been working in the field for years, that this is a tremendous guideline for working with someone with Rett syndrome. We start off by sharing some of the things that are unique to this diagnosis, which lead to impairments in communication and need to be understood and respected while you're going through communication intervention. We also talk in this about how to do an assessment, how to find the communication strategies that are perfect and right for your child, and also some guidelines on how to do that continuing intervention. We hope that everyone can take advantage of this, and when you next get into clinic, I know that Dr. Ryther and Dr. Weisenberg have copies that you can see. Some other things that are coming up. Well, very reason we're having our town hall today is because we have taken every in-person event this year and we've pivoted and taken them virtual online. All of the things that we've been able to do from our research standpoint and family empowerment and support can only be done through the support of our community. And although we've had a revision for our budget this year, our community still says our work is important, and we are really grateful for everybody who's contributed through any of the events to support our organization and the clinic. On October 3rd, we are having a virtual Rett Ride Across America. If you visit rettrideacrossamerica.com, we hope that you'll participate, whether that's just taking a ride around the block or hopping on your Peloton or keeping an eye on Casey Byers, who we hope will still be riding the Gulf Coast, barring any more hurricanes coming his way. On October 24th, we are going to have a virtual gala, and this will be a really fun event. For $50, you can get one of these really cool wine glasses or pint glasses, fill it up with your beverage of choice, and join us for some a multimedia extravaganza, really a live gala that you can enjoy from the comfort of your couch in your pajamas. So please join us October 24th and invite others in your circle to join and learn a little bit about Rett syndrome and join in our mission. Now, if I can, the much loved event, Joyce, if I can have you come on and talk to us about your stroll-a-thon. I'm going to take you off mute, or let's see. Joyce, I'm not sure if you're able to join us and give us a little bit of information about your upcoming stroll-a-thon in May.
Yep, can you see me and hear me?
There we go. Hi, Joyce, how are you?
Good, I got Lily's here too.
Hi, Lily.
And yeah, thank you guys for everything. This has been super informative. And as always, you know, thank you to Dr. Robin and Dr. Judy for everything, and Paige. And yeah, the stroll-a-thon, we were, you know, hoping to have it in May, and didn't happen. But right now we are looking forward to next May, the first Saturday in May, May 1st. And so stay tuned for details. Hopefully we will all be able to gather in person. And I know some of people on the call have been to many of these. Some were looking forward to it being your first stroll-a-thon, and it's really, you know, a wonderful community event. We get a huge turnout. We get about 500 people, about 20 families, and you know, able to celebrate our loved ones with Rett syndrome, and it's really a wonderful day. So we're looking forward to it. And yeah, if I could just add, I think everyone knows how to get a hold of me, but if you don't, my email and phone number are on the rettsyndrome.org page, and feel free to, you know, reach out anytime.
Thank you, Joyce. Thanks, Lily. And I'm going to invite you back on in a minute to talk about some other support that you offer. But first, I'd like to remind everybody about October Awareness Month. Okay, it is our month to shine. Nobody cares more about Rett syndrome than we do. We're very fortunate that we've had a long-standing history of October being our month to raise awareness. As I said, so many people want to help us on our journey. They're just waiting to learn more and be asked to participate. So we have a wonderful campaign. We launched it last year with the hashtag #OverpowerRett. And we hope that you will participate in October with sharing stories about your own family, your own journey, and combine your personal experience with Rett syndrome with the facts that we have provided for you. If you visit rettsyndrome.org for Family Resources October, there's also this wonderful banner across our homepage, so you don't have to worry about finding it yourself. You click through there and we've got videos that you can share. We'll have 31 facts about Rett syndrome that you can pick up and share whenever that certain fact just strikes you right. We have temporary tattoos and merchandise that you can buy for yourself and wear your team colors proudly, or buy as gift items for others. Many of our events, as we've said, have gone virtual. We have a lot of strollathons that are virtual. We have the virtual gala and the Rett Ride Across America. All of this information you can find on our website. So please join in and get the word out. There's nothing like social media to get a hashtag trending. So please, if you post anything, use the hashtag #OverpowerRett. And it was a huge success last year, and we know it will be again this year. Okay, so I talked a lot about our two fantastic state reps in Missouri. We've got Amanda Sommers and Joyce Opinsky, who are with us today. I hope your webcams work. I'd love for you to turn your cameras on and introduce yourselves. Tell us a little bit about your families and how you are there for other families. And I already showed people the page on the website for getting your contact information, but we couldn't have a town hall without connecting with you personally. So Amanda, thanks for joining us from school, and Joyce, thanks for joining us today as well. Amanda, do you have any words of advice that you'd like to share with us today?
Well, a lot of what Mickie talked about really resonated with me. My daughter Clara is 3.5 years old, and she was diagnosed almost 2 years ago. So on October 9th was our diagnosis day, or direction day, as some of the other Rett parents like to call it. And right after that, it's almost the 2-year anniversary of getting my phone call from the amazing Samantha Brandt for the first time, and visiting the St. Louis Rett Clinic for the first time. And I got to meet, Mickie and Joyce right away. Actually, I think Ellie was the first girl with Rett syndrome that Clara got to meet. So that was a really neat thing to actually get to see. One of the great things about Rett Clinic is getting to connect with other parents and families, and seeing our girls and our guys get to connect. So yeah, Rett Clinic's a little different right now. It's not so fun being locked in those rooms, but hopefully we can get back to where we can see each other and socialize once again there. So just about a year ago, they asked if I would be willing to kind of step forward and partner with Joyce as a state rep. And Joyce is on the St. Louis side of the state. I'm on the Kansas City side. And with Joyce having an older daughter, Lily's older, and then Clara being younger, we kind of help just run the spectrum of what our families are going through. And if there are questions that we can help with, Joyce has been through it, or I'm going through it right now. So we're just always happy to be available, whether that's via email or our phone numbers or on Facebook. Our Missouri Facebook page can be a little quiet sometimes. I think a lot of us use the BigRettSyndrome.org Facebook a lot, which is great. But we're always available in that Missouri group too for any questions or to talk about local events. Or I know we used to try to do some social gatherings, not as much anymore, but hopefully we can get those things going again, because we definitely love this role. I love being part of RettSyndrome.org and getting to work with Joyce.
Gosh, Amanda, thank you so much. You've got your hands full, doing many different roles and wearing many hats, and we're so grateful for what you do at RettSyndrome.org. Joyce, we've heard a little bit from you about your phenomenal strollathon, and I wonder if you have any other messages of hope, inspiration, motivation to share with your families today.
Sure, yeah. And this is Lily's here with me. This is my daughter Lily, who turned 21 a few weeks ago. That's the picture you see on the screen there. And she was diagnosed when she had right around her second birthday, so 1999, which is the year the gene was found, and we've come a long way since then. But I've been the Missouri rep for 13 years now. My heart drops a little bit every time I hear, there's a new family diagnosed, but I'm so happy when they find me and find the group, and we're really lucky here in Missouri. We've got really a wonderful group of families, and we love getting together. I mean, some of the other Rett families are my closest friends now, and we've really got a great group here. So a lot of you I know. I think I know most of you by phone or Facebook or have met you, but if I haven't, please reach out and just know, you're not alone. This is, we're here for you. One quick example, one of the local families here was recently, their daughter was in the hospital, and, most of you unfortunately know what it's like when your kids are in the hospital. You're sleep deprived, you can't think. And so, they reached out to me and another parent, and just texting, here's what's going on, what do you think? And And so we were able to, in the calm of our own home and, reasonable amounts of sleep, have you thought about this? And have they looked into that? And so, there's people, just know that there's people here that are happy to help, and we're, here for you anytime.
Thank you, Joyce. Thanks, Joyce and Amanda. You really do. You care about other families, and to find that energy and have the time to get outside of your own life and help others around you is, I know as I started as a state rep myself, it's one of the most rewarding things that you can do. And for new families on this journey, I want to say, one day you're going to find yourself in a mentoring position too. I know it's hard to believe, and it may be hard to feel that way right now, but just look at Amanda and look at Joyce and be inspired by them, join in them. When we come together, so many wonderful things can happen. And my biggest advice is for you to continue to surround yourself with positive people, positive families like the Opinskys, the Sommers, the McCools, others along the way. Sam Brandt, who's right there in your backyard as well. And you're going to be okay on this journey. But we're here to provide you with resources so that you have less stress and more success. So thanks for being with us today, and always for your families. Okay, I think that we've skimmed over a lot of the highlights of what's been happening with the clinic, with the university, with research, with RettSyndrome.org, with your state reps this summer. And now we'd like to turn to some specific questions and answers that were submitted. I'd like to remind everybody that you have the chat box and can write in questions for our presenters right now. So if you all would like, I'm going to go ahead and pause my screen and invite all of our presenters today to come back on your webcam, and we're going to go through some questions that were pre-submitted. And again, if you have any further to add, you can type them in. Dr. Ryther, I'd like to start with the ones for you and Dr. Weisenberg. I think you have them in your hand. If you'd like to read them off and answer, that's great. If you'd like me to read the ones that I sent over, I'm happy to do that as well. How would you like to do this?
I think we can read it off. That's probably more than fine. So Judy, did you want to start?
Absolutely. So the first question we were going to start with is, do the Rett clinics consult or exchange medical information with each other? Do they support each other to help improve resources as well as options and treatment of symptoms for Rett families? And have they ever considered adding dental or dentist to the clinic? So starting with the dentist question, because that's a more targeted one, we actually have a specialty dentist clinic at St. Louis Children's, and whenever possible, insurance, et cetera, we do refer there if it's needed, or we try to help. We know of a variety of community resources that we try to help identify, along with many other specialists that we incorporate and identify for our patients. As far as consulting and exchanging medical information with each other, absolutely. Every aspect of care is collaborative, and this occurs in both formal and informal settings. So we have patients who come from other states. They might have been seen at other centers, and we will, with families' permission, speak with their doctors. We also are involved in a variety of formal networking discussions. For instance, Dr. Ryther and I are both participating in a forum to work on optimizing the identification of seizures in the clinic, and how we can better diagnose when somebody is having seizures versus other types of spells. And so we absolutely do collaborate and coordinate. Dr. Ryther, you want to take the next one?
Okay. So the next question was, over the years, what kind of significant changes have happened in the St. Louis clinic, and what are some future goals? So first of all, I'd encourage again, for those of you who are interested and able to register for the virtual symposium upcoming. That's actually the main focus of the fourth talk, which I'll be giving at that session. But in brief, we are thrilled to have seen how far we've grown. So we have a little over 90 patients that we currently follow in the Rett Spectrum Clinic. We are getting more and more geographically diverse, from initially sort of a Missouri, Illinois heavy centric to a much broader population, including from faraway states such as Florida or Arizona, for example, and of course, even internationally. The other thing that we are thrilled is that we've been able to bring several, again, therapeutic trials, as you've already heard about, to the local community, as well as to participate in some of the things that Judy just mentioned. And so one of our biggest goals is to continue to work on these processes. We do also have as a more immediate future goal to continue to work on the development of the adult side of our clinic. And so again, our clinic fully sees adult patients as well. But I think that it's a bit of the Wild West sometimes for our families that are older, and we are still working with them to kind of carve out some of their paths and how we approach that. So again, if you'd like more details, please tune back in. Judy, did you want to look at the next?
Sure. So there were two questions here. What signs can we look for with kidney or gallbladder stones? And should we be concerned with our daughter's heart and what to look for? So starting with that second question, we do know that with typical Rett syndrome, there is an increased risk for something called long QT syndrome. And at the minimum, every individual with Rett syndrome should be getting an annual 12-lead EKG. It's a very simple test that can be obtained at pretty much any medical center. Of course, at regular checkups, and if you come to a Rett clinic, we will be looking for any other symptoms that would suggest other problems that might be related to the heart, but that is the main thing, getting that annual EKG. As far as kidney or gallbladder stones, so gallstones and gallbladder conditions do seem to be at a higher risk in individuals with Rett syndrome. Kidney stones, not so much. For our young people who are not necessarily able to communicate as well, at least not verbally, we need to look for any signs of discomfort, changes in feeding tolerance or nutritional tolerance, changes in the appearance of urine or stool. The main thing is if you're seeing your child not act like themselves, they seem like something is bothering them, something is uncomfortable, always make sure to bring that to the attention of your doctor so that we can look and see if there's some other tests we need to do. But the biggest clue for either of these things would be evidence of discomfort. And if that's the case, those are amongst the things we would look at. Dr. Robin.
So I'm actually going to do the next two questions together. They were submitted independently, but are actually very overlapping. So in the first, they asked for an opinion on a specific scientific journal article. And it's actually the article referenced by the next question, which was, I'd like to know more about scientists reversing Rett syndrome symptoms in mice and when this procedure will possibly be available in humans. So one of the things that's actually wonderful about being part of this community is it's also an incredibly exciting area of basic science research as well. And so realizing that it wasn't that long ago that the MECP2 gene was found, to know that we're even at the step of talking about can we reverse Rett syndrome or can we cure it, that's the other word a lot of people would use, is thrilling and exciting. But unfortunately, it does take often a long path. And so what they have seen at the mouse level is things that surprised even some of us in the same community, in that not only, of course, in younger mice, but in fact in older mice as well, that when they were able to correctly restore appropriate levels of MECP2, which is the protein that's involved here, they were available to be able to actually reverse some of the mouse-specific examples of Rett syndrome symptoms. Not everyone thought that if you were older and want a more sort of advanced mouse age, that you would be able to actually reverse some of those symptoms. And so this is actually really positive and really thrilling news. When that will come to light in humans is a much more difficult answer, and unfortunately a longer answer than any family probably ever wants to hear. So I can't answer that because I don't know that yet. But what I can tell you is that scientists around the world are working on that answer right now. They are led by efforts crossing communities of scientists, in fact. And just last fall, I attended actually a symposium led by Uda Zogby, who is one of the world's experts in this area, to really look at these exact questions and to see how could we garner the scientific energies of the world to really focus on, can we cure Rett syndrome? And again, what's promising is that there may be help not just beyond our youngest, but even amongst our older individuals as well. So, Judy, next question.
Sure. The question was, currently my stepdaughter uses Inovalon. What are the most modern and efficient medications? So we actually had to look this one up. So Inovalon is apparently the brand name for rufinamide in Europe. The brand name in the US is Banzel. And I believe this question is directed specifically towards seizure treatments or epilepsy treatments. So both Dr. Ryther and myself, we are formally trained in the treatment of epilepsy as well. And the world of epilepsy is a very huge topic and it's complex. The short answer is that any available treatment for seizures in epilepsy can be considered within Rett syndrome. And for each individual, depending on the types of seizures they have, what other medical problems they're dealing with, which medicine might be the best choice is going to be an individualized decision. Unfortunately, we have a lot to learn yet about if there are truly some medications that work better consistently for Rett syndrome, but I do suspect some of it depends on the age and the type of seizures, just like we see in all genetic causes of epilepsy. There continue to be new seizure medication, anti-seizure medications developed every year. In the US, Epidiolex, which is the FDA-approved formulation of CBD, became available a couple of years ago and is approved for Lennox-Gastaut syndrome and Dravet syndrome-related epilepsy. And there continue to be some other medications that are approved for both focal and generalized seizures. However, there is no evidence that any of those clearly work better in Rett syndrome than the older medications. And as always, we want to minimize risk and optimize the potential for benefit. And it ends up being an individualized discussion along with diet, VNS, and rarely surgical options when we're talking about approaching seizures. Back to you, Dr. Ryther.
So the next question I think I addressed to some extent in the talk, but was what do the drug therapies target that are currently in clinical trials? And so just to briefly review, some of those specific drug trials are not what I would call Rett specific, meaning that they might target a variety of different things. For example, CBD from the Epidiolex or GW trial targets a CBD based ion channel in the brain. But that's not a Rett specific target. Whereas there are other trials, for example, Acadia or trofinetide, that is a Rett specific target. We don't always know the complete answer as to how they work, but for example, with IGF-1, it seems to help promote regrowth of dendritic spines. So these are the little hairs that are on neurons, and in Rett syndrome, you tend to have both fewer and shorter dendritic spines than you would expect otherwise. It also seems to have an improvement in things like antioxidants and sort of the immune balance in the brain, which can be a delicate process. So, Dr. Weisenberg?
Okay. This question was, when my daughter is sitting down, she pushes down on her thighs. Is that because she has a UTI, leg cramps, or a sensory or some other stimuli? And the answer is yes, any of those are possible, as well as even a few other things. The way to answer this is really to have a careful, detailed discussion with your primary care team, if you're in a Rett clinic, your Rett team. We would go over a lot of details. When does this seem to happen? Does it happen in certain positions or with certain activities? And based on that, determine if we needed to do a urinalysis or other testing. But there are a wide variety of possibilities when we hear about a symptom like that.
So Paige, I thought we would pause. That was the pre-submitted questions for this particular group. Were there any questions submitted during the talk today?
Okay, Thank you. I think you all have been so comprehensive that we don't have new questions in the queue. And we do have, we have a few more minutes. So if you would like to pick maybe two or three from the other list, and certainly if other questions come up, we are available always to you. Today is not a one and done opportunity, but we do have a few more minutes. So if there are a few others that you'd like to hit, please do.
Judy, did you want to start with first?
Sure, and I don't know if we want to invite particularly Mickie and Joyce to join us on this one. This was a question that was submitted elsewhere, which is, what are the biggest challenges parents face as their Rett kids age beyond 18? And, you know, as it happens, I tend to see a few more of the adult patients than Dr. Ryther in clinic, and it has been a wonderful experience. I'm not sure how many of you know that in general, child neurologists actually do at least 1 year of adult neurology training, and we are technically neurologists, which means we can treat patients of all ages with neurologic conditions. That being said, we are truly pediatricians, is how we ultimately came to this. And there are a lot of things about adult medicine that we are probably not as strong in. And so we can provide a lot of resources for Rett syndrome, and we very much advocate for our patients. But finding a primary care home that really is the right fit, I know, is one challenge I've seen. Finding a home as far as school and day activities is another challenge I've seen, as well as in general navigating the adult medical worlds and their understanding of how much our particularly young ladies are capable of understanding, and in how they approach our young ladies, as have been some of the things I've observed. And Mickie and Joyce, if you'd like to add your perspectives as you've been entering this world of age beyond age 18.
Sure, I'll go quickly. So this was supposed to be my daughter's last year of school. And, you know, we're sitting here at home. So, yeah. So, you know, we're just getting started on this. I think in St. Louis, we're, you know, tremendously lucky to have excellent healthcare. And so we're beginning, but I'm less worried about the medical care. And I think the biggest challenge, you know, for us is, you know, finding meaningful things to fill, you know, for Lily to do all day, to do something that is in a, you know, safely, and that's something that she enjoys and that's meaningful and with good supports. In Missouri, we're really lucky. There's great funding here. And hopefully people, you know, are able to access that. If you need help, you know, reach out to me, reach out to Mickie, Amanda. But it's, you know, finding the proper supports. You know, my daughter loves being in a preschool environment. And so she has spent some summers, you know, pre-COVID and some time volunteering in a preschool. And I think, you know, that's what we sort of envision her doing, you know, with some of her time post-school, you know, when it's safe to do that. But, you know, finding the right place, finding the right support for her. And that, from my perspective, is the biggest challenge. And I think some of it is finding like-minded people who want the same things for their kids, and working together to, you know, try and create solutions.
Yeah, same. So much the same as what you just said, Joyce. Ellie's 23. I will say that the upside, people ask me sometimes what I would do differently. And the list is like as long as it is for anybody, like talking about anything in life. What would you do differently in hindsight? But Ellie fell off a cliff, so to speak. That's sort of the term that we use in the Rett community, when she graduated from high school. And it took a while and a lot of encouragement to find things that engage her socially. Of course, in this environment, she's more secluded because of COVID. But what I advocated for in school was I would make a list of qualities that I thought a good para or a good assistant would have with Ellie. And it occurred to me after Ellie had been out of high school a couple of years that I should be making that same list of what qualities would a person have. You know, it doesn't mean you always find the exact right person, but you kind of know the qualities. What's Ellie drawn to? What does she like? And I think the key is finding somebody who wants to know what Ellie wants to do and communicates with Ellie about what she enjoys. And then finding ways to do that. Then you just find it's tricky, but be involved with things that go beyond the school. You know, whatever it is you like to be involved with in the community, give your daughter an opportunity, or your son an opportunity to be involved with that same thing, and pay attention to what he or she likes. I just looked up at the clock and saw the time, so I thought I better be quiet.
Well, that's great. That's great advice, Mickie and Joyce. Thank you for sharing that. And, you know, I'll just add on, I don't know if anyone caught this past summer was the 30th anniversary of the passage of the Americans with Disabilities Act. So it's been 30 years that we've had laws in place in the United States to secure the rights of our children in society. At that time, many with developmental disabilities were living into their 20s. And so a lot of focus and supports were focused during school age years. We are here to say that that is no longer the case. We understand far more about our children. We're taking better medical care of them, and they are living well into adulthood, both in Rett syndrome and in other disorders such as Down syndrome, and on and on and on. And I think that we're going to see some continued push, and we all have to engage as parents to acknowledge that our kids don't go from children to geriatric care. There is a lot of decades in between now that we have to create programs, and we're at a place in time where we as parents have to be a little creative with that, but the provisions are there, our advocacy is needed, and our women and young men can have beautiful opportunities in society. So make a plan. That's all. That's my biggest advice, is as our children become adults, in our database, we have just as many children living as adults with Rett syndrome as we do as children. And it bears our organization and foundation to spend some more time thinking about this and bringing resources to you. And for those of you who have created these beautiful lives for your adult children, keep sharing your stories, please, on social media. There's a lot of hope, a lot of goodness, a lot of wonderful scenarios that are happening, and we just need to share those stories with each other. And don't forget about conservatorship and guardianship. That's an easy one to miss and overlook, and shouldn't have to be required, but it is. And your state reps can help you with that. Sam Brandt, myself, can help you with that as well. All right, so that was a lot on adulthood. See, we could go on forever and ever and ever. I cannot wait for the day where we can be together again in person, and we can spend a day, 2 days, 3 days together. When we're together, we as parents learn so much from each other. We look at each other's equipment. We look at how we move through moments of distress, upset, anxiety, and we embrace our kids. And to me, that is just what fills my tank. I'm really grateful, though, for technology that has allowed us to be together today via this virtual meeting to share some of our wisdom, our time-tested, life-lived experiences, but mostly to hear from our experts at the clinic. Again, we're so grateful for you, for not giving up, for not throwing in the towel, for being with us and helping us along the way. It really helps all of us sleep better at night. Thank you for your commitment to research, to care, and I think in light of no other questions, Dr. Ryther, Dr. Weisenberg, do you have any closing thoughts for our group today?
Well, I think one thing we'd like to say is we exist because of you guys. So that is why we are here. Hopefully you have been able to tell that this is not just part of our jobs for Judy and I. This is true labor of love. We both, again, would love to share someday with you our stories as to how it became a labor of love for us. And And so we will find a way together through this uncertain time, and don't hesitate to bring up a question or ask, you know, because if we can help, we will find a way to make it happen.
Thank you very much. We can schedule another town hall anytime you'd like, and we'd love to hear your background and your stories. Again, nothing humbles me more than meeting people like you who have come to our world, embrace us, give us hope, and show us a path forward. We're grateful for you, and we will continue to support you in your efforts. So I know you all will be together again for your 5th anniversary celebration. Whether it's virtual, everyone can bring a cupcake and blow out their own candle. I encourage you to do that. Until we can meet again in person, please look for the recording link in your email, share it with others who couldn't come today, pass it along to others in your care circle if there was a piece of information that you think they would benefit from. Your child is worth every effort. We believe in them. We believe in you. We thank you for being with us today. And really just know that you are not alone. Even if you're feeling a little bit isolated today, we are still together while apart, and we'll see you soon. That concludes our webinar today. Everyone have a lovely afternoon, and we hope to see you online for October Rett Syndrome Awareness Month. Thank you and take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Paige.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.